Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, across all platforms. You have stumbled onto the Gaming Tangents Podcast.
Woo!
Oh, yes. Haha, can you feel it?
I feel it.
You do feel it. Okay,
I
good.
can feel it.
I was double checking. I already asked you before off the air, but I already knew that. So that's good. Anyways, yes, this is the official podcast of the cross-platform show. Soon to come, YouTube, sensation, breakthrough, something. Won't be on YouTube Red. I guarantee you that. Unless you really feel we're worth that much. Maybe you do. That'd be great.
But maybe RedTube.
RedTube? Is that what it's called?
No, it's a porn site.
Oh. Don't go to that site, children. This is not that kind of podcast.
This is a family podcast.
Yes, a totally PG-13iest of all podcasts.
Have you not heard about that? That people say that the naming it YouTube Red was a bad idea because people get it confused with RedTube.
I had already just figured YouTube Red was just a bad idea in general, and so I just kind of stayed away from the topic.
Well, it looks like they have some interesting shows and whatnot, but still.
God, yeah, I can't wait to watch PewDiePie get scared.
Nick, I'm not talking about that.
Oh, all right.
Like, they have some legitimate shows. The only thing is I don't see people subscribing to actually watch these shows. That's the thing.
That's their big issue. You know what I actually noticed recently is that YouTube Red does actually come packaged in with their Google Music subscription, which before I felt was a complete ripoff because for $99, I think it might have even been more, every year you get the Google Music subscription, which seems like way less of a deal compared to Amazon Prime. But now at least you kind of get both, so it's kind of bumped it up a little bit.
Well,
but only a little bit.
Well, I did try YouTube. I don't know if you've tried it or not, but I did try it for a month for free. Because if you have an account, you can actually do that. And I actually liked the fact that it had some features that I still think should be included with YouTube in general. But
expound. Expound, please.
Okay. For one thing, you can actually, if you're listening to it on your phone, you can actually not close the app, but minimize the app and still have it run in the background.
Right.
That is so convenient when you're listening to stuff. When you're not watching.
That. Yeah.
And then on top of that, you can like save stuff offline and whatnot and watch it for later, so you're not using up your data on your phone and whatnot. So little things like that. I mean, for $10, it's a little much, but if you're saying it comes packaged with that Google Music, maybe it's not such a bad deal. But I've never tried it.
It's not bad. I liked Google Play Music. I think that's the actual name's Google Play Music. And I actually liked their service. It was kind of a mix of Spotify and Pandora. So nice. you could either Spotify it and listen to whatever the heck you wanted, or you could Pandora it and kind of just make like radio stations based on theme or genre of bands or stuff.
I
like that.
I definitely like Pandora's presentation, but I like Spotify's features better.
Right? So it's kind of a best of both worlds. But again, at $99 a year, it didn't seem like that much of a deal to me when I'm still getting Pandora for free. And I think even Google realized that now because now they offer the Pandora version of what they do for free as well. So
nice.
They're still trying to figure out what it is they really want to do as far as the pay-for-use version of Google services. It seems like they're still trying to get their footing there. Google's been really used to being free for everything for a long time. I think they haven't quite figured out that niche that'll kind of get people paying to do Google stuff.
Well, they better catch up soon, because...
Yeah, man.
I don't know. Like I said, the YouTube Red, like, I see some of the shows they're trying to... There's only one that really caught my interest. It's something I probably wouldn't watch, but, you know, like... It kind of reminded me of like one of those Netflix premium shows and what. Well, you get it with Netflix, but you know what I mean. And some show about dancing and whatnot. I'm like, okay, well, the girl's cute, but
Maverick's number one justification to watch anything.
Yeah, pretty much. No, but I mean, it looked like it could be an interesting show and whatnot. But I couldn't picture just sitting there on YouTube watching that. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of the biggest issue, and I think that's been a divisive topic for everybody, is that YouTube has kind of always been this place for unknowns to get discovered for free, and now we're kind of paying for these shows for kind of these YouTube celebrities now. Like YouTube's got its own A-listers, and now so if you want to watch those A-listers do more stuff, then pay for it, guy. And I don't think anybody's really ready for that. It seems kind of counterintuitive to what YouTube's whole purpose was from the beginning. So it's gonna be tough. YouTube Red, it's up in the air right now. I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see how it works. I think it has some interesting features. I'm not saying it's a terrible idea, but it's a lot terrible of catching up.
It's not so much terrible as it is terrible. Yeah, no, they got a lot of catching up to do. And again, don't take me the wrong way. Not just because we're looking to put videos on there as well, but I really, 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 really love YouTube. A vast majority of kind of my video content that I consume, I guess that's the word to use, it's off of YouTube.
Right.
So I do love YouTube. I just don't know if YouTube Red is quite a step in the right direction.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see. Things can change.
Yeah. So what have you been playing?
What have I been playing? Old games. I did fire up Fallout 4 again for a little while. Mm-hmm. But mostly, again, still been capturing footage of older games for the show.
Right.
I feel like I plugged in something recently, but no, I can't really think of it. No, I've been tinkering a lot with After Effects lately, which is something that hopefully you'll be able to see the results of that in the next week or so.
Will we be seeing it on the podcast?
No one is going to watch it on the podcast, but hopefully they'll watch it on the YouTubes, youtube.com/cross-platform show. That would be amazing.
It would.
So please come on by, folks, because I'll definitely post it there as well.
There you go.
I'll tweet about it too, at CrossPlat Show. That's our Twitters.
Yeah.
How about yourself? What you been doing?
I haven't been able to play many games lately. I picked up Mega Man Legacy Collection for 3DS, and I mainly picked it up for the new challenges that they're going to have, because I know it's just a collection of the first 6 Mega Man games. Why Mega Man 7, 8 get no love, I don't know. And
it's probably all the electronic communication.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that anybody who hasn't played Mega Man outside of the US is going to get that?
No, but they probably wouldn't be listening to our podcast this long either.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, I've been playing that. I got the limited edition one that came with the gold Mega Man and had a pristine box and everything, and it got messed up. But that's a story for another day.
The bummers of life.
Yeah. I was so upset when I saw that. I thought it was okay, and then when I saw it, it was like all these creases and everything. I'm like, oh, damn it. So yeah, I've been playing that. I've been playing, I've been trying to play Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, but I haven't gotten too far because the Bowser aspect doesn't interest me like it does a lot of other people. I mean, they've made Bowser an interesting character. It's just this particular one, I don't care for him.
It's still not grabbing you, huh?
No, but again,
2-3 weeks later.
Well, I also haven't had much time to play it, but like I'm playing from the beginning because I have this bad habit of getting into games and I get to a point and I stop. And with role-playing games, that's a really bad idea because then you forget what you need to do.
Yeah,
it's happened to me at least 4 times now. 3 times, 3 of them on Dragon Quest, and you know how Dragon Quest is. Was it Dragon Quest 7? I completely forgot what I was doing. So I had to start from the beginning, which sucked because I was a good 15 hours into the game. And the first 2 hours of that game is brutal because you don't do any fighting whatsoever.
Really?
You know, it's all exploring and trying to figure out how to get the story started, pretty much. And so there was that, and then there was the case of Dragon Quest IX, which is really fun, but I got stuck at one point where I was doing like side quests, and then I was like, I had gotten so deep into the side quests that I forgot what I was primarily supposed to do.
Oh, jeez.
And so I had to start over on that one. And one thing about Dragon Quest IX that cracks me up is the character creation, because you're pretty much just making the cast the Dragon Ball in that game. You know, all the...
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a connection there.
It's Akira Toriyama, so, you know, he's a great animator, great artist and everything like that, but it's one of those artists that you can tell when it's his.
Yeah.
I was like going through...
There's a style there.
I was going through character creation. Oh, look, there's Goku. Oh, look, there's Krillin. Oh, look, there's Bulma. Oh, Vegeta. Okay, I can make Vegeta. I mean, seriously, you can make the cast of Dragon Ball in that game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure that's partially on purpose as kind of a pseudo joke that everybody's in on.
I have to assume that that's what it is, because, I mean, right down to the specials, the special attacks, I mean, they go Super Saiyan without going Super Saiyan.
Is that even possible? Are they at such a high level?
Yeah, it's over 9,000.
Oh my god!
But yeah, it's I mean, aside from that, I mean, the game is really fun because it kind of reminds me of Dragon Quest III, where you were able to pick your character classes and
yeah, I remember you liking that.
Yeah, you can switch them out and everything like that, and it's something.
Is it the one that had the was it the Jester?
Yeah, the Jester, which I found out that one of my friends told me this, and I didn't know this, that you get the Jester, and he's pretty much useless, but if you get him up to level 20, he becomes a Paladin. Which is the only way you can get a Paladin.
Well, of course. I mean, how could you not see that connection ahead of time?
Right.
Jester equal Paladin. That's how Cecil got his start.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was
the court jester of the Red Wings.
Yeah, right.
Oh man.
No, yeah. What was Cecil? He was a
He was a Black Knight.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Yes. You actually just reminded me of. It is not so much something that I've played recently, but a commitment that I decided I would start for myself at some point when I finally have a bit of time. I have quite the massive queue that I've built up again from all those PS2 games, especially that I bought while I was in Iraq. That I've never played. So I've decided to go ahead and once I get to the point where I have a little bit of time to play some games, to dedicate a week to each game that I've never played before and see how far I can get into that game in a week.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I don't even have the time to do that.
Right, so I know. So that's I don't know when this is going to happen, but I've decided that that's what I will do. Which for some games is probably more fair than others, because some of those games are RPGs, like Dragon Quest VII is definitely in that list of games that I own that I've never played, unfortunately.
Wait, Dragon Quest VII?
Is that the one? 8? PS2 game?
8.
Whatever. The one where all the characters look like Dragon Ball characters.
Right.
Anyways.
Oh, that's every Dragon Quest.
Oh, that one. So yeah, that one. So, and then games like that add to it the extra challenge of that one I bought in Japanese. So I get to work through that really slowly. So we'll see how it goes. It's not going to happen, probably within the next few months, but as things hopefully settle down in RL, IRL. Hopefully,
way to be hip there.
Hopefully, I'll have time to do it. So in the next few months. So that's my promise I've made to myself.
I see.
I'm gonna do it.
You go for it.
I will.
I, on the other hand, I'm collecting some games that I got rid of that I regret getting rid of. Unfortunately, some of them are kind of expensive to get. But I did pick up four games for $20 this week.
Oh.
So, like,
do pray tell.
Yeah. Well, I took advantage of it, and,
No, I mean the games.
I know, that's what I mean. I took advantage of the deal because one of the games was Watch Dogs for PS4, which I wasn't too crazy about the game in general, but to get that among a group of games for $20, I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I picked up that. I picked up 2 God of War games. Well, technically 3 if you think about it, because I got God of War 1 and 2 on PS3, and then I got God of War Ascension. And then, what was the other one I picked up? I picked up Fable 2 for Xbox. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I picked those up, and I've been tempted to pick up Final Fantasy Explorers, except that I don't really know what it's about, but everybody keeps talking about it.
Okay, that's the one that recently came out, yeah?
Yeah. So right now I'm trying to take advantage of all the deals that are going on with the older games.
I couldn't tell.
But there's so...
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I've been enjoying with the PC stuff is things like the Humble Bundles that come out. Love those because I can just get a whole bunch of games that I've been meaning to play for a long time for like $10-15.
I see.
That's how I wound up with. That's why I wound up with a whole slew of Neo Geo games. I just recently, it was a month or two ago, I bought a whole bunch of Ubisoft games that I've been wanting to get. Right now they've got a Star Wars bundle going, which a lot of those games are a bit older than the stuff that I'm really used to. Like they have like the TIE Fighter games in there, which I remember being really good, but especially with Star Wars, that's something that I probably want to play with the kids, and I don't know if maybe those games are too old for them, or...
Maybe the Force Unleashed here could be a little violent.
It's not on there, no.
Oh, okay.
Force Unleashed, I honestly wouldn't mind too much. I meant older. I meant old, like these are games from like the late 90s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, this is Star Wars, the TIE Fighter and the X-Wing games.
Okay.
They were like basically flight simulators, but in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, those never appealed to me.
Right, so I don't know if they might be a little too complicated. I guess that's probably the better terminology I should have used, is that they were maybe they're a bit too complicated for them. Some of those other games I just never really heard of. The only games that are in that package right now, and there's still some that they haven't announced yet, is the 2 KOTOR games.
Oh.
Which, of course, I've heard are amazing. But at the same time, RPGs are one of those few games that I really don't have that much time to invest in anymore.
Right. No, I had Knights of the Old Republic when I had an Xbox. And because I am so used, especially at that time, I was very used to Japanese RPGs, that I did not like the setup for the game.
Right, that's a hard barrier to cross.
Yeah, I was just like, I do not like the way this game plays, and so I kind of gave up on it. I mean, I'd probably give it another chance, but, I need to get an Xbox or they don't have a Mac version as far as I know, so...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
One game that I'm interested in picking up that kind of goes to old school, and this kind of relates to the topic of the day, is Undertale. I've been listening to the soundtrack, and it's amazing.
Soundtrack's awesome. Yeah, the soundtrack's awesome.
Oh my god, like it really, we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago that the soundtrack is one of those key elements that makes the game. And clearly, I listened to this and I'm like, this makes me want to play it more, And it's like, despite the graphics, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say the graphics are awful, but I mean, it's nothing compared to like your Call of Duties or your, what's the other big one? Not Medal of Honor. Oh my god, that's a deceased franchise.
Battlefield?
Yeah, Battlefield. Battlefield or Halo or anything like that. And something so simple, with the simple graphics and everything. I was watching it, and it really does remind me of Earthbound as far as the graphics go. but I've not played it myself, and it's something I'm wanting to play. And thankfully, that's one of those games I can download on my Mac. Yeah. So.
Same here. I've been hearing just so much about that game recently, and yeah, I've also heard a lot of the music tracks, so I'm really interested. And yeah, I also agree with what you say, because even and for those who don't know, the game takes a very 8-bit stylistic approach to its graphics, and even then, it's not even up to par with like probably the best looking 8-bit games at the time. So it doesn't look all that pretty from an outsider's perspective. Now, everybody who's huge fans of Undertale, I'm not underscoring or undercutting the graphics. Don't take it that way. But from anybody looking at it from an outsider's view who hasn't played it yet, it does look more Boy and His Blob and less Super Mario Brothers 3.
But that's okay, because
that's all I mean, which is fine. Yeah, no, because again, Boy and His Blob, huge fan base. Like, people loved that game.
But the graphics were terrible.
The graphics were terrible. People loved that game. So it's the same thing with Undertale, where and that was stylistically chosen. Like, we know that.
Right.
In this day and age where everybody's laptop can model, a soldier or whatever, like you were saying, Call of Duty, they specifically went for that look. And so it's okay for the way that they wanted to do it. And so we understand that. And apparently it's been doing amazing.
Right.
So,
and I heard,
not a big deal.
I heard the game, compared to other games, isn't necessarily long, but for the price, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. So, I was listening to one review, and she was saying that it took about 7 hours for her to complete it, but that was, there's multiple routes that you can take in the game. So it really depends on how you play the game. That also affects, the longevity of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's dive into this as if we hadn't pre-planned it ahead of time. Let's pretend like we're spontaneously talking about good graphics and whether good graphics matter. Graphics, Maverick. Yeah. The graphics.
Oh, graphics matter a whole lot. Who cares about the gameplay, right?
Now, I think the way I want to start off this conversation with kind of splitting it and asking you a question as well, which I had actually posed to you before, and that is the difference between like actual graphical fidelity and artistic style. Because I think nowadays those kind of get cross-pollinated? I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but people tend to confuse one for the other.
Right.
Would you agree with that? And if so, is one more important to you than the other?
I don't know. It really depends on how you're talking about. Okay, good example. You're talking about good graphics versus artistic style. I remember you telling me years ago how unappealing Final Fantasy IX looked.
Yes.
Yeah. You hated the look of that. And honestly, I had a little bit of trouble with the look of the characters too, but it grew on me because, it's Final Fantasy, and that was an artistic choice. The graphics are excellent in that game. But some people may have been turned off to that because the characters didn't look realistic, because Sephiroth was such a realistic looking character when you made it to the very end of the game. But then you have a game that is just, graphically appealing, and it's like, okay, the graphics look excellent. This is going to be an amazing game. Like I was just talking about Watch Dogs, and we know how that turned out,
right?
And again, the gameplay, it wasn't that all appealing. I picked it up because I'm still interested in finding out what happens, but at the same time, everybody was like, oh, well, the graphics don't look as good as this, and the PC version had all these graphics locked out and everything like that. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I get the argument they're trying to make, but at the same time, that really deter from the game being enjoyable.
Right.
And
this,
again, for me, there were some things that were kind of. I only played like the first like 2 or 3 missions before I decided that I don't really know if I like this game, but it's like it was still. I wasn't really looking at the graphics as much as I was worrying more about how the game played.
Right, which is, that's the long-standing argument, bigger than the question that I just asked you, is gameplay versus graphics.
Right.
I think that's gone way back into the pantheon of probably the 16-bit era. I don't think we were really talking about that much in the 8-bit era.
Not really.
Probably because a lot of people didn't consider the Master System as any kind of a contender to the Nintendo anyways. But definitely in the 16-bit era is where we started comparing graphics and gameplay within the same game. And so we've been dealing with this all this time, and it's kind of funny because technology has grown throughout all these years. The amount of graphics that a system can push out to your TV has gotten, pseudo-realistic. Like at times there are some games that looks like you're playing a Pixar movie right in front of you, but the gameplay could still be complete crap.
Right, exactly.
And still not fun. Or vice versa. We're still having games where they're super fun to play, but for somebody who really just cares about the polygon count, probably doesn't look as nice to them.
Right. I will admit, like, okay, a perfect example, Metal Gear Solid, when it came out on the PlayStation, I thought it was amazing. I thought, wow, nothing can top this. Well, yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah, nothing can top.
You figured that was the end, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't see video games getting, that I couldn't say. I wasn't really thinking about that. I was like, we're in this era of polygons and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. But I like the look of Metal Gear Solid. Now, keep in mind that my only knowledge of Metal Gear prior to that wasn't even the MSX games. It was the Nintendo game. That Nintendo masterpiece.
Oh, yes.
So now I look back on it, and I forget. Did you tell me that you finished Metal Gear Solid 4?
Not 4, 2.
Okay. In Metal Gear Solid 4, well, spoilers. In Metal Gear Solid 4,
it's fine.
There is a part. I think when you get to the 4th chapter, I believe, you actually have to go back to Shadow Moses Island.
Oh, no. Why'd you spoil that?
Yeah, you have to go back to Shadow Moses Island. But
I can't play the game.
Here's the kicker. Well, it was a surprise to me when I played. I wasn't expecting to go back there.
Yeah.
So they play the next chapter. It starts out, and I kid you not, it's the exact same graphics as Metal Gear Solid for the PS1.
Oh, that's clever.
Right, and it starts out like that, and then all of a sudden it ends up being Snake dreaming. But he starts out, before it closes up on him, it's still the PS1 Solid Snake, which
the no face polygon face.
Right, exactly, and it morphs into it morphs back into old Snake, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I don't think I can go back to that game. Because it's just so hard to look at, I'm kind of guilty of that, but at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, and especially now, I'm like, I could probably still go back to it. I just gotta remember this is what it was at the time. But if you gave me a choice and I had to choose between Twin Snakes and the original, I'd probably choose Twin Snakes, despite the fact that Twin Snakes made some changes that I did not like from the original, because they didn't use the original battle music, they didn't use the original boss music and anything like that. And like I was saying before, it has some ridiculously overdone action sequences.
Yeah. It's funny, you've actually brought up a really good point too, is that at least for those first 2 generations of games, again, there really wasn't much in the way of something that's very popular now, which is kind of the HD remake.
Oh, God.
I can only really think of a handful. The first to come to mind is the Super Mario All-Stars game, which revamped the graphics for the original Mario Brothers games on the NES. There was a Ninja Gaiden remake.
Oh, God, don't get me started on that.
I didn't want to bring it up, but it was there. It was really like a small handful. It wasn't something that we really did. And even after the 16-bit era, there is really not much of that for those generations of games.
Right.
But for that first generation of 3D games, the Saturn and PlayStation 1 games, pretty much all the classics have been HD remade. Hell, there's been a ton of HD remakes of PS2 games, and that's where I thought that, like, oh, it's not going to get much better looking than this. It'll get a little crisper, but it's not going to get much nicer looking. That's where I thought, and, now we've got Kingdom Hearts HD Remix 3.185 over 16. And so I think it's kind of funny that you bring that up because, a lot of those games get the HD remake treatment, and I think that's probably a lot of the reason why is because at the time that they came out, and I've pointed this out before, they looked ugly, and a lot of people accepted it because the games were fun and it was amazing for people to play these, I guess they were considered 3D. To me, it just seemed like another perspective. But to play polygon characters running around in a map where you could go back, forward, left, and right, and up and down. And so people didn't really worry about the way that they looked back then. But I certainly thought that they looked ugly. And now looking back, a lot of people also are realizing, like, wow, this is not as nice as I remember it. And we're more than happy now to rebuy Resident Evil remade again, and Metal Gear remade. It's funny.
I think that there is a little bit of there's a little more convenience factor. At least for me, it is. Just simply because I have a significantly smaller number of PS2 games than I used to have, but some of the games I want to rebuy have been released as HD versions. The Prince of Persia trilogy, the Splinter Cell trilogy. I've had those games. Silent Hill, which I heard was atrocious for some reason. And I have Metal Gear Solid 2 and 2, 3, and Peace Walker. I think that's what it's called. For PS3. And I bought those more out of convenience than, oh, well, it looks, it's not on the PS2. It's just, with the Blu-rays, you have less risk of scratches and whatnot and things like that. And the graphics are going to look a little cleaner, but, it's like, it doesn't deter from the fact that the games are still, PS2 graphics. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, that sounds a bit more like upscaling as opposed to like completely remodeling the entire game.
Right.
Like, again, I bring up maybe not so much Kingdom Hearts, but definitely something more like the God of War.
Well, Kingdom Hearts is one of those exceptions simply because it's not just the fact that it was an HD remake, but especially for us here in America, we didn't get the final mix versions of the games in Japan until then. And so for us, it was a new treat altogether. Now we get to finally, Kingdom Hearts 2, we finally get to fight all 13 organization members. We get to see all those new cutscenes,
right.
And so it's it's nice to see that, and there's that purpose. The graphics, I do see that they look cleaner when I see them side by side, but I didn't really notice too much. Even with the biggest comparison was with Birth by Sleep, which you see them side by side. It definitely looks cleaner, but that's not necessarily why I got the game. I got the game because out of convenience. Again, it was part of a collection, plus it was an edition that never came out here in the US.
Right.
But
well, let me pose this to you then. If, say, the re-release of Resident Evil on the GameCube looked exactly like the PS1 version, would you have bought it?
Probably.
Oh, explain.
Well, Resident Evil 2 and 3 also came out on the GameCube, and they were just ports of the PlayStation games. They were just cleaner. I still got them. So
you're the wrong person to ask this question to, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you forget that I try to keep consistent, and I'm kind of getting annoyed that these games are getting reissued, every system, and it's like crap. I need to, because I had all the GameCube Resident Evils at one point.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on my point. Quite honestly, it's true, because pretty much all the games from our youth that get re-released, they pretty much get re-released untouched.
Right.
For the most part. But all these older games, and I think maybe it is a convenience on the developer side, where 3D models are a little easier to upscale than sprites, because sprites are kind of set the way that they are. Whereas 3D models, you just kind of run them through a program, re-render them at a higher resolution. And they can look nicer, but for some of these games, they honestly are going through and remodeling the entire game, changing up the storyline. Sometimes they'll re-record audio.
Well, yeah.
Redo cutscenes.
Well, okay. Again, you're right. You're probably asking the wrong person, because I like consistency. Okay, but I think I finally reached a point where I'm kind of annoyed, because Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1, both which were GameCube exclusives, they're now on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And I want to get those. I'm like, okay, cool. Then they're remaking Resident Evil 2, which I'm definitely all for that, and I definitely am looking forward to it. They haven't mentioned anything about 3 or Code Veronica, but they just announced that Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 are all going to be released on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And I'm like, damn it, again.
That's interesting.
And it's like, I've been trying to keep consistent and have these all on one system, and they just keep re-releasing them time and time again. And I'm like, I think I'm done. I'm just going to get the ones that are released that I don't have. Like, I have Resident Evil 0 on the Wii. Oh, excuse me, not Resident. Yeah, Resident Evil 0 on the Wii, and I only got that because I had to get rid of my GameCube version. I haven't played the Wii version just simply because I haven't had the time. But now, since I don't have the Resident Evil 1 remake, I'm going to be getting it for the PS4 eventually, and Resident Evil 0 comes with it. So
yeah. So I guess maybe to clear up confusion between us for the listeners, do you find yourself more buying or rebuying these games because you want to put your old systems in storage or sell them off, or are you rebuying them because they're slightly crisper packaging?
I would say it's a little bit of both, because it's kind of inconvenient. I knew you were going to
say that.
Well, it's okay. Hear me out. It's kind of inconvenient to have all those systems out, especially with a living situation like mine right now, where I can't really have them. Have them all out. It's just too difficult. My PS3 is probably the one system that has lasted the longest when it comes to my systems being out on the shelf, because it can play the PS2 games and the PS1, all three, PS1, 2, and 3. If the PS4 could do that, then I'd be like, okay, cool, then I can put away the PS3. But I actually do play a lot of my PS3 more than I play my PS4 right now. And the Wii and the Wii U, it's kind of the same thing, right now. My Wii, first of all, my Wii disappeared. I have no idea what happened to it. I moved and it didn't come with me.
Disappearing Wii.
Yeah.
We have a disappearing Wii.
Yeah, luckily.
Anyone seen a disappearing Wii?
By this time, I had my Wii U, so I wasn't really too worried about it because everything had been transferred to the Wii U. But as far as, playing them because they're upscale or anything like that, it really isn't that. It's just more convenient for me.
That makes more sense.
Or
a lot of sense. Yeah, I completely look at it a different way. In fact, it's funny because the other day I was going through some of my older games, and we had been recently talking about Resident Evil and all the different Resident Evils and stuff, and I didn't realize that between all the systems that I have owned, I actually do have the entire series up until 5. Is it?
Right.
Yes. Or is it 5? Is 5? Yeah, 5's the one you gave me.
Yeah, 5's the one I gave you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, wow. Like, I completely forgot that Resident Evil 2 was re-released on the Dreamcast.
Yeah,
which is the first time I bought it, by the way. It's not a rebuy. That and Nemesis. I got them both on the Dreamcast.
Right.
And I completely forgot that those games had come out on the Dreamcast. I thought it was only Code Veronica. And I was going through my Dreamcast games, and I was like, oh, well, hey.
Yeah, they
and I have the remakes on the GameCube as well. So I had 0 and 1. And I was like, oh, well, I've got them all the ones that are worth having anyways.
Well, I will say this, though. Now, Resident Evil 4 will probably be one of those cases where I did rebuy it because of the graphical differences. Not so much because it looked better on the Wii, because there was a Wii edition that came out. Because the PS2 version, I remember when I saw it, it didn't look as clear as the I remember this as the GameCube version. But I got the Wii edition, and I didn't get it for any other reason than it fit my television screen and didn't look all like squashed or anything.
Interesting.
Because, it annoyed me. I had to adjust my television because the game was set in widescreen to begin with. And when that game came out, when the GameCube was out, PS2, GameCube, mainly PS2, GameCube, because I know some PS2 games and some Xbox games did this, but this particular version of Resident Evil 4, it was meant to be in widescreen, even on regular television. So there wasn't any kind of upscale option, at least that I know of, that you could have done with the GameCube to make it, fit the entire screen. And that annoyed me because I actually started playing that game around the time Resident Evil 5 came out. And so I was playing it. I actually made it to the second disc, which, considering how long the game was, I was like, I can't play like this anymore. So I went out, bought the Wii version, started all over from the beginning again, just because I got tired of looking at the game the way it was on my television. Yeah. So
that makes sense, too.
There are some exceptions, but I mean, that isn't even necessary.
That's totally practical, though. Yeah, totally practical.
It's not necessarily a graphical issue. I mean, again, I when you're talking about, oh, well, the game has good graphics, it has to be good, no, because it was more of the case, that was more of a case of I just wanted it to fit my TV screen and not look like crap. Yeah. The game was fun. But then, people who will say, oh, well, the graphics are great and everything like that, but then the gameplay is shit, then the graphics really don't mean anything.
They don't. For some people, they really do. They just kind of want to sit there and look at them. I have a feeling maybe that like pretty graphics for some people is like music and games to us.
And it could be a point, but then I don't know. I mean, I know that, even to this day, there'll be sometimes where I'll try to justify something that everybody doesn't like, but I'm also a person who's more partial to a whole lot of things than the standard person is. I mean, was it like, for example, off the gaming topic altogether, I am looking forward to this Ghostbusters movie. Nobody seems to agree with me. There you go.
Do we have to bring this up? No.
Well, it's a tangent. We're not going to go into this because we were supposed to go. Excuse me. We were supposed to go to.
Habada.
No. We were going to go over this at the beginning, and I just completely forgot about it, but...
I was hoping. It's like, oh, good, he didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
Good.
No,
I'm safe.
But I'm just saying, just to give you an idea of my persona, I'm looking forward to it because, I mean, despite the fact that it's not... nothing's going to top the original. Okay. Plain and simple. But it looks, to me, it looks enjoyable, and I'm trying to look at it that way as opposed to, oh, well, they're rebooting and everything like that, because I've just accepted the fact that things are going to get rebooted. Just make it good. You know? And
I've accepted that they're going to reboot it, I just don't have to give it any money.
Right. And that's your choice.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see it, and... You know, the one thing last thing I'm going to mention on the whole thing is that I really would have liked to have taken my son to see the 30th anniversary reissue of Ghostbusters while it was in theaters. Would have loved to have done that. I found out a week after they stopped showing it that they were doing that. I was so disappointed because my son's very into Ghostbusters, so he saw the preview and he looks interested in it, you know, but he also has seen the original and the second one, and he loves those movies. So
yeah, mine too.
So you know,
I'm honestly more interested in playing the video game with them than I am taking them to that movie.
Well, oh, you mean the Nintendo one? Okay. Well,
no, that's actually the one video game I'm not interested in showing them.
But I am interested in seeing it. I'm not saying that the movie is going to be good. Who knows? It could be terrible, or it could be great, you know?
Or it could be just a movie. As Mr. Sunday says.
There is that possibility, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing it. But, you know, that's just how I am. I'm very partial to a lot of other things, you know? So, you know, I'll give something a chance, but then, like, when it comes, you know, going back to games, you know, I'm trying to think what was, like, okay, the Dragon Ball games, you know, let's go to the Dragon Ball games for a second. This is when you and I were into the Super Boten games on the Super NES.
Okay.
You know, and it was like, okay, cool. Then Ultimate Battle 22 came out on the PlayStation. Now, and this was before it came out in the US. Okay, so any of you who've only played the US version of the game, you are actually not getting the full experience.
Nope.
Okay, but I was like, oh, cool, and it looks cartoony and everything, but the game was absolute crap.
Yeah.
Dear God, you know, graphics... the graphics on the characters look good, not so much the backgrounds, because the background was... Yeah, the art
looked great.
Yeah, but
remember how excited we were for that. Like, oh, it finally looks like the show.
Yeah, and the game... And we were like, oh, cool. And, I mean, I don't know when you played it, because I know we never played it at the same time. But
my other friend out here had it.
Yeah, the game was just total crap. But then go to the Saturn version, which was it Shin Butuden? Which used the same graphics, but totally made it play like the Super Nintendo games. The graphics weren't 3D; they were 2D. You know, it was an amazing game, and it pretty much used the same graphics, the same voices, the same music, and whatnot. I think about the only thing they did differently was the intro was recut. It wasn't even a new intro. It was just recut to fit the Saturn.
Ho ho! Hit the mic.
Yep.
Party foul.
To fit the Saturn standards of the Saturn game. And I think the other thing is that they left out the animated cutscenes, which was fine because those animated cutscenes sucked.
Take that.
Yeah, I'll take that PlayStation version. So, you know, and then we had people out there defending it. You know, the PlayStation version.
Right.
Oh, but it's Dragon Ball. It's a good game. No, it wasn't.
It doesn't necessarily need to be a good game just because it's Dragon Ball.
I think the only thing that game had going for it was the US cover was one of those rare occasions where the US cover I thought was better than Japanese cover.
It's funny. I actually had a Dragon Ball game on the Saturn that I tried to defend as being fun, and it really wasn't. I forget what it's called, but it was a lot more like fighting in the air, and you had like 3 characters fighting each other at the same time, and the controls were simplified so that you could do more of that really quick fighting.
Right. I know which game you're talking about, and I cannot remember the name.
Yeah, I don't remember the name either. I could go look for it, but I don't want to. Because to me, it seemed really cool because it kind of captured that fast-paced fighting of Dragon Ball, which was one of those things that was really hard for the Super Nintendo to get down, and also the Ultimate Battle 22 game. And so I bought that thinking, oh, this is finally going to be like a Dragon Ball game where you're kicking people into mountains and throwing fireballs on top of them and stuff. And it was only maybe a third of that cool.
Well, okay. Well,
if it was even that. But I was like, no, this is the game that I thought it was going to be. And I swore up and down the sprites were super teeny. And it was just like the gameplay was just way too simplified. But I defended it for a while. Like,
I'm trying to remember the name of that game. Hold on. I think I found it. Hold on. Oh, I forgot about Hyperdimension. Remember that? Remember that one?
I forgot about it as well.
Yeah, which is funny.
Equally forgot about it.
Which is funny because that was actually graphically that was probably one of the best looking Dragon Ball game on the Super NES.
Yeah.
Let's see, GameCube, Wii, PlayStation. Okay, PlayStation. No,
it came out on PlayStation 2.
Legends. Was it
Dragon Ball? Maybe
Dragon Ball Legends. I think that's what it was called.
Could be.
Yeah.
Because the graphics were so teeny, like it was pretty much able to have every single character from Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
But it just wasn't all that fun.
Yeah, well, this one?
That looks right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the Saturn version, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I remember the commercials for that. And that game looked fun to me too. But
yeah. Not so much in actual gameplay.
Another example, I don't know if you ever played the Budokai games.
Super Nintendo ones?
No, Budokai, they were the ones on PlayStation 2 and GameCube.
I've seen them played.
Okay.
They play a lot like the Naruto games, right?
Yeah.
They're both Bandai.
Yeah, they play in a similar fashion. Okay, the Budokai, I got the first one. I actually got it on GameCube. Now, here we go with the graphic thing, okay? The first Budokai game was, polygons and whatnot and, 3D on PlayStation 2. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And I was about to buy it. And then I read that the GameCube version was going to come out, but it was going to come out cel-shaded. So, which made it look more like the cartoon.
Right.
And so I waited and I actually picked up Budokai for the GameCube instead. And I enjoyed it, and it did feel like you were playing the cartoon. It was a really good game. Played through it, finished it. And, that was that. And then they came out with Budokai 2. I'm like, okay, cool. So we pick up Budokai 2, which, from there on out, every Dragon Ball game was cel-shaded after that. And I play through it, and it's essentially the same thing. It's like, okay, you did...
also sounds like the Naruto games.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I went through story mode, and I'm starting from the beginning. Okay, fighting Raditz again. Okay, fighting Vegeta and Nappa again. And then I stopped, because I was like, this is just the same story mode again, just with a different... aspect of how you go about fighting them, because you still fight them.
Yeah.
And it's like they had good graphics and everything, looked beautiful, but I think about the only thing it didn't do is it didn't have because on the first game they actually had the narrator saying what's happening. It's kind of like a summarized version of what's going on during each quote unquote episode. Between battles. This one didn't have that. This one just had a map and you fly to it, and it's like, oh, Raditz is over here, you gotta go fight him. I'm like, I'm doing the same story over again. Why?
Yeah. Do you think maybe that's because for us at least, we had already kind of reached Dragon Ball burnout at that point.
Not necessarily.
Go ahead. No? Because for a lot of people, it was fairly new. It wasn't until like 97, 98, I think, that it finally came to the States. And we had already been watching it since like 92?
90, maybe
92, 93?
Yeah.
And I would feel like for us, those storylines are already super old.
Right, exactly. But it wasn't even...
For a lot of people, it's fresh. And so to have it in the first couple of games, which for a lot of people, those are probably their first Dragon Ball games. Because again, we've been playing Dragon Ball games since the Super Nintendo days.
Right.
Like maybe... Like, do you think you would have been less annoyed if that was only the second ever Dragon Ball game you've ever played in your life?
Maybe. I don't know. Because it's like having just come off the first Budokai game, I was like, okay, this is cool and everything like that. But then you come play the second one, it's like, I just played through this. Why am I playing through it again? Why not use another aspect of the story? Because the game...
Right.
Oh, that's the other thing. The first Budokai game, only as far as I can remember, only went up to the Cell Saga and then finished there.
Really?
Yeah. Was it?
So you would have thought I would have started at Frieza.
Yeah. Who came first, Frieza or Cell?
I think Cell came first.
No, Frieza came first, because then it was Cell. I don't remember fighting Frieza, but they would have had to have started off of Majin Buu. All
right, yeah, sure.
And that in itself was, that was already a long storyline to begin with, at the time, because we didn't have Dragon Ball Kai out then.
Right. They were all long storylines back then.
Right, but I mean, they focus on the main storylines and none of the filler stuff like Garlic Jr. or Lord Slug.
Right, no, that's what I mean.
Was Lord Slug one of the ones on there? I know Garlic Jr. wasn't one of them, but anyway...
don't care.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it wasn't until I think maybe I don't know. It made me not interested in Budokai 3. I did hear that they did some what if stories on some of the PlayStation 3 games, like what if was it Bardock? What if he went Super Saiyan? And things like that. And it's like, okay, well, these are interesting storylines, or like Vegeta going Super Saiyan 3 or Super Saiyan 3, which never happened in the cartoon show.
It's okay to say Saiyajin on this podcast.
Yeah, it is.
Actually preferred.
Oh yeah, I prefer to say it too, but for anyone who grew up on the American version, Super Saiyan, Super Saiyajin. Anyway.
Know what I'm saying?
Right. So I mean, okay. So what I'm shut up. So we walked right into that one.
Nice.
Anyway,
appreciate it.
What I'm getting at is that the graphics were really good by that point, and I just had no interest because it was because it made the gameplay boring, going through the same story over and over again, so it made me lose interest in any game that would be coming out, beyond that. Now, that's not giving it a fair chance, and in all honesty, I do want to play Raging Blast, although I do have a problem with them integrating the GT storylines in there, because as far as I understand, those aren't canon. But that's a topic for another day.
I think you're right. Another day, another podcast.
Right, exactly. So I do want to try Dragon Ball Raging Blast, or this one that just recently came out on PS4. Just because I've given it some time to where you're not, even if they are repeating the same storyline again, maybe they've done a very different spin on it by this point. Who knows? You've
let it go so that you could miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So there's that, and then I was going to bring up another point, and I just can't remember what it was now. Oh, I think the only exception was, which I never got to play. I had it, and I never played it. Well, again, one of those cases where I had the game and I never played it. Super Dragon Ball, which was just a straight-up fighting game. Nothing that worried.
Well, that sounds interesting.
Nothing that focused on storyline or anything like that. Nothing, it was just gameplay. As far as I know, I've not played through it. So I think the only reason why I ended up opting out of even playing the game was because there was no option to put Japanese voices in, which I prefer. I prefer the Japanese voices.
Death nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah, which I played Budokai, which didn't have a Japanese option, but I was fine with it. But like by that
would have murdered me.
Yeah, but I was okay with. I wanted Japanese voices. If it was going to be a straight up fighting game, I would have liked the Japanese voices.
It's funny. This actually reminds me, bringing up the old PS2 Bandai fighting games, because it was actually the Naruto fighting game, the original one on PlayStation 2, that introduced me to Naruto at all.
Really?
Yeah. Have I never told you this story?
No, you never have.
Oh, man. Okay.
I know. Yeah, all I know is you're the one who got me into it.
Yeah, it all started from this game. So after I'd come back from Iraq, one of the many different trips I had to Japan, I don't remember which one, what the year was or anything. Whatever that game came out, that was the year. I remember going to Akihabara to buy whatever, and coming across this store that had a TV outside displaying a game, and it was a demo for that Naruto game, the first one, and I just remember thinking that it looked so cool. Like, not only did I just kind of already dig on the character designs, but that the graphics really looked like you were playing a cartoon because they were cel shaded like that, but they were clean cel shaded. So it wasn't even like Jet Set Radio where you could still kind of tell that they were polygonal characters.
Right.
Like, it looked like a cartoon. And then the other thing to put on top of that little ice cream cake, which is something that I had really been wanting fighting games to do for a long time, which they're just now finally starting to do, is to have actual cutscenes for super moves.
Right.
And so that Naruto game was the first time that I had ever seen it happen. And I just thought, oh my God, this looks amazing. What is this game? And so just completely on a whim, I bought this game. This game called Naruto. I had figured it was just a game. Did not know it was based on anything else.
Right.
But just based on the way that it looked and the way that it looked like it played, because I didn't get to actually play it, but the demo made it look like it was a lot of fun. And it honestly was. I really liked that first game. And then it did introduce me into the show. And so then I kind of figured out who everybody actually was. And so then when the second game came around, then I bought that game and I thought, oh, this is cool. The roster's bigger. But I had noticed the same thing that you kind of did with the Dragon Ball game, but it wasn't so much that the story mode was the same as that the gameplay was more or less the same. Like, you kind of run around in this open 3D field. You have your little sub weapons like your shurikens and your kunais that you can throw, and then you can enact a super move, at which time then it kind of turns into this tug of war of quick time events, basically,
right,
to see if you'll actually pull off your super or if it'll get blocked. And so I thought that game was also really fun. It looked a little bit better, but I had already started to notice the pattern.
Right.
And so by the time the next one came out and I watched the demo and it looked like it was the exact same thing over again, it kind of fell into that list of games where, like, yeah, I want this, but I think I'm just going to put it in my Amazon wish list this time as opposed to actually buying it. And the Naruto games just kind of stayed that way. And it just kind of turned into a thing where I just kind of really wanted the games that corresponded to the story that I was watching at the time.
Right.
Like whatever the story was in the show. But those kept changing too. And so the game they'd have to keep coming up with new games.
Right.
And so I just kind of gave up on it. I really like those games and I like the way they look. I kind of hope that once the series is completely finished, which I'm pretty sure is coming up pretty soon, if not already, that they'll kind of just come out with like a final, like, Naruto fighting game. Like, this is the last one.
Right.
And maybe I'll get that one.
Kind of like the movie, which is it's called The Last One.
It is called, no, isn't it just called The Last?
Something like that. It's like,
yeah.
I almost feel like they were like, we're done, finally.
Yes, throwing their pencils up in the air.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, I kind of...
But yeah, it was the graphics that did it for me. Like, it just looked really pretty.
Right.
And it looked really fun. Also, the gameplay on top of that. So it definitely needed to have both. Because it wasn't the only game that I'd seen while I was out there that looked like that. But it was the only one that looked like that much fun.
Right. No, I totally get it. I was kind of worried about that with the... Because the only version of Naruto that ever came out that was different from like what was coming out on the PlayStation... was it 3 at the time? 2 and 3?
2.
Yeah, well, because...
Originally, it started on the 2, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I actually had... what was the... Oh, my God, I forgot what it's called now. Ultimate Ninja?
Sure.
For the PS3. And, again, it went back to the whole thing. I mean, there was a story mode in addition to the fighting mode. Right. But, you know, it followed the storyline of the show. Which I couldn't get into. There was it the Ultimate Ninja Storm? No, I'm trying to think of what the game was called. There were 2 games, the Broken Bond and there was something else, and they were both pretty much, they weren't fighting games, they were like action adventure games that were based off the TV show storylines.
Those are the DS games?
No, these were the ones. Oh God, don't get me started on the DS games.
Okay, I won't.
One was called The Broken Bond, and that was based on the Rescue Sasuke arc. And then there was another one, and I can't remember what the other one's called. I'm finding the name here, but I can't find it here. And it was a US release. I don't even think it was released in Japan, as far as I know.
Oh, wow.
But they just followed the storylines of the show, and they were both action adventure based. They weren't, and they actually used cutscenes from the TV show.
Okay.
And that's more of what I was looking for. I wasn't necessarily looking for a fighting game, but every Naruto game that came out had to be a fighting game, you know. And it's like even when you did story mode, it's like, oh well, they're still using the fighting game elements. It's like, no, I want to see an action game. And Xbox 360 was the only system to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was actually one of the things I had liked about those first 2 PS2 games. I don't know if they both did it, but one definitely did like a what if scenario. Like it was basically its own separate episode that was not shown on TV for the most part, with animated cutscenes and everything. Like not with the 3D models, like 2D animated cutscenes. And I thought that was really cool. And then, yeah, I kind of wish more games based on TV shows would do that.
Right. And that's kind of what this game did. I never got the Broken Bond, which I would have liked to have gotten, but I had it on Xbox and I played it. But unfortunately, at the same time, I didn't have the time to play it because that's around the time I was going through stuff in life, and it didn't allow for me to actually go and play the game. It's like
yeah.
So, but I enjoyed it, and it was different from the PlayStation ones. So
yeah.
I could appreciate that, but I mean, that's where we go. That's where I think that's where I see in terms of graphics versus gameplay. The gameplay is good and everything like that, and the graphics were good, but when it doesn't have to be just lousy gameplay. I mean, look at the topics we just talked about, Dragon Ball and Naruto. It was repetitive. It got boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
It got boring.
They still looked pretty.
It's like people buying. It's almost like you can compare it to people buying the sports games every year. I
had a feeling. Yeah, that's what you were gonna say.
Yeah. Every year, it's like, oh, okay, this little thing changed. Or EA, those sneaky bastards, and what they did with, I think it was FIFA 2014. The same game with just switched names for the Wii version. But yeah, it's just, more of the same. And it's like, okay, well, it wouldn't be so bad if you didn't have to do a yearly freaking release every year. Look at Grand Theft Auto. More or less the gameplay is the same. I mean, you get new elements and all that and everything like that. But Grand Theft Auto, the time you have apart from each game gives you that time to say, man, I wish they came out with a new game, you know?
Exactly. Like I said, yeah, they give you time to miss it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like you were saying Red Dead Redemption, how you said you enjoyed that game. And I think I heard that they're working on a new one. And it's like, okay, cool. You know?
That'd be cool.
They're not coming out with another release.
Yeah, like, it doesn't have to be every year. It doesn't have to be Call of Duty or Skylanders or any of that stuff. Like, I don't know where that mentality came from. That's definitely a very new thing.
Yeah.
In fact, especially in kind of the PS3, Xbox 360 era is kind of where that began, where there, aside from sports games, which is the only time that model had ever been implemented, where they were like, okay, well, this series is so popular, we need to keep pumping them out every year. And so it's strange to kind of see properties get diluted down, but there's still a fan base for it. They're still making money. People are still paying for it, and so that's never really going to go away. Like the one series that I did not think that model was ever going to get applied to was Assassin's Creed. And it's because everybody shat on the first one for the most part. Like, it was always kind of like, oh, I like the idea here, but the execution was poor.
Right.
And for me, the execution is what I liked. I liked the idea of it, and so that's what kept me playing till the end.
Right.
But everybody kept shatting on it, and so I was surprised that they even had come out with a sequel. And apparently that sequel was good enough to make it be a yearly thing. And they ended up getting bit on the ass for it.
Well, you know what's something
with Unity. That whole Unity thing was just, bad PR. Ubisoft just had a bad year that day.
Oh yeah, I know. I actually just bought Unity for like $13, brand new. Yeah, apparently all the bug fixes are. There's a whole slew of bug fixes now, so I think the game's supposed to be playable.
Yeah. But even the fact that we need those.
That's a whole other, again, a whole other topic, because that is something that's I'm starting to really get on my nerves. Street Fighter 5. But another series that it was just recently happening to, and I think they kind of got the hint with the most recent one, was New Super Mario Brothers. When the original came out on the DS, I loved that game. It was like a throwback to Super Mario Bros. It was like the best elements of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. More Super Mario 3. And it was such an excellent game. And then they announced it for the Wii U, and it was a couple of years later. It's like, okay, cool, And then they came out with New Super Mario Bros. 2. I'm like, okay, cool, let's see how this is. And it's like, oh, cool, they brought back the raccoon suit, but it's more or less the same game. They didn't. Even the music wasn't changed up.
Oh, that's just lazy.
Yeah, I mean, like it was varied. Like, I guess you can say it was a variant on the original song they used from the first game. But those three games used all the same one. I think New Super Mario Bros. 2 was fun. Don't get me wrong. It's a very fun game, Yeah. And I thought the coin collecting aspect was going to play more into it, but I just found out it's just how many coins you can get, and that's about it. Yeah, it was very unrewarding.
Gameplay.
Yeah.
Gameplay.
So, while I enjoyed it, I think the most annoying thing they did to that is they added more. They've done this thing where like the music kind of plays a part into that. I don't know if you played any of the new Super Mario Brothers games.
I've never gotten to.
Okay, one thing that they added to the game that kind of mixes it up a little. It's not a big change, but it does kind of affect gameplay. Is during the music they'll have these characters go like wah wah, or like something like that, depending on the song, right? And when they do that, the enemies actually will stop and dance to that. And so, like, when you're not expecting it, they kind of stop, and then it's like, oh crap, I'm gonna run into this guy. Oh
wow!
Like if you're gonna time your jump so that you know where they're gonna be, and then they stop to dance, that could totally affect, everything. And they kind of overdid it with the 3DS version. Yeah, because I mean they even added it to like the towers and the castle, which wasn't a part of that before.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that now because I feel like they haven't learned their lesson.
Right.
Not so much with that, but now they're just kind of shifting their focus to Paper Mario. Because I swear to God, it seems like every year there's a new Paper Mario game coming out.
But I was actually just listening to a podcast today. What was it?
Gaming Tangents?
No, not Gaming Tangents. That would be us.
Yeah.
I was just listening.
Yeah, right.
I was just listening to us earlier, and no.
I made some really good points to me earlier.
Yeah, the Corn Shack Nation podcast. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, and they were just mentioning that. Oh my God, I lost my train of thought. What was I trying to get to on this?
Super Paper Mario?
Super Paper Mario. The last traditional Paper Mario game was the Thousand Year Door on the GameCube. No other Paper Mario game after that has been a traditional game. The closest that came to it was the Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. That's the closest it's come to going back to its roots. But yeah, because Super Paper Mario was more of an action game, which I actually didn't like that game. I was looking forward to it, and I didn't care for it. And then Sticker Star was the first actual Paper Mario game I've ever played. I've not played Paper Mario or the Thousand Years Door. Sorry, folks. And I enjoyed what I saw, but apparently that didn't even follow traditional gameplay like the other games. And then, then we have this Paper Jam, which, like I said, comes closest, but it plays more like Mario and Luigi because that's the series that it's following.
Yeah.
So, they're doing all this Paper Mario stuff, and I guess this new one is coming out on the Wii U, from what I understand. But
he's painting things.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, why don't we get back to the traditional gameplay? So...
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's a weird balancing act to do there because anytime you kind of keep your series moving forward, you do want to introduce new elements, but you also don't want to stray too far from what the game was because then your original fan base gets upset. That's always that's a tough line to walk, I think.
Which it does. I mean, like, okay, look at Mario and Luigi, they try something different, and yeah, while I don't really care for playing as Bowser so far, and it's still different. It's not like going through the same thing again. I mean, I'm asking for another game like Partners in Time, but I'm sure if I had that every year, then I'd get tired of it,
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, because of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, after we got those games, came new Super Mario Bros. U, and I was like, okay, cool. And again, these are all good games. I'm not knocking them or anything like that. They're just redundant. I think about the only thing they changed up besides having the squirrel suit was that the main music finally changed, but that's just the main music and the map music. That changed. The castle music still the same. The underground music, well, you're never going to hear a different version in the Mario game. Not to the only game that had a different castle theme in that whole series was the first game. The first new Super Mario Bros. Game, which in my opinion was much better than the one they used in this game, by the way. But that's the only... That was really the only difference. I mean, that and the music for the maps. But I mean, come on, how long are you going to stay on the map screen to listen to music?
Yeah. So, it's funny. You know who I think has done kind of a real interesting job of both doing something new while maintaining the traditions is going back to last week, the Street Fighter series.
Right.
Because every numerical iteration that comes out really does change it up as far as the gameplay without getting rid of the core
element
of what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to think that something that seems like so straightforward as a fighting game where it's just kicking, punching, jumping, Hadoukens.
Right.
That they're able to always kind of come up with something new and fresh. While at the same time not completely alienating everybody.
Right.
Like, you're always going to have those groups that don't like change. Like, obviously, Street Fighter 3 was really guilty of that. People didn't like the way that changed.
You mean?
But for the most part, any person who had experience with Street Fighter could come back and play Street Fighter 3 and more or less at least, figure out the basics.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and like with Street Fighter 5, my biggest gripe is the gripe that everybody else has: no arcade mode. That's about my only gripe with the game, and I will not be getting it until they come out with an arcade mode.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's more of a strange business development issue than it is than it is an actual gameplay issue.
That's.
But no, I understand. Yeah, no.
That goes back to the topic that we need to cover.
Yeah, we definitely touched on Street Fighter 5's faults.
Yeah, but
many of them.
I mean, you're right, and again, it's supposed to be an amazing game, and it looks amazing, and yeah, it looks like it keeps it fresh. Which is fine. You're not seeing your yearly releases of Street Fighter. Instead, you're seeing your yearly updates of Street Fighter, and that's what gets annoying.
Right. Yeah. I don't see how long that keeps up.
Yeah. Well, hopefully with this one, it really is just more downloadable content. I don't mind that so much, but the way they did it with Street Fighter 4. I kind of wish that they just had kept it from the first disc and keep the upgrades instead of, hey, you can download this and it's gonna change the name and it's gonna be this. It's like
that was odd.
It should have just been kept Street Fighter 4.
Odd and weird. And yeah, you can downgrade it if you want to play with people in the other versions. It got real complicated.
Yeah,
unnecessarily
complicated. But yeah, we definitely. I mean, in that sense, we kind of detracted from the main thing because we're focusing on popular games that are, good graphics. But yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a great game. Again, going back to Unity, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Yeah.
Graphics.
Take that, No Face.
Yeah. Look at the graphics and how good that was. But then, what else happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of that going on right now. But yeah, I don't know, because we're in kind of this weird time now that 5-6 years ago, I think a lot of people didn't think we were going to be, especially like more bigwigs at companies and stuff, where we're enjoying both games that look super amazing, high res, ultra polygon count, and we're enjoying our Undertales and Shovel Knights and all these games that look like games that should have existed 12-15 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when we going back to older times, I mean, we touched on it before. I'm pretty sure we have. Let's go back to Earthworm Jim.
Let's do that.
On Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Personally, you and I both thought that the Sega Genesis version blew the Super NES version away.
Absolutely.
And in terms of presentation, I personally thought the music was better, with the exception of the last level. And it even had the additional level on there. Because I mean, back then we had the big console wars then, Super NES versus Genesis, and which one was better.
Right, any one up you could get on the other.
Right. And you and I were definitely what would be considered fanboys of each respective system.
The opposing sides. Yeah.
Yeah, you were totally on board with Sega, and I was a Super Nintendo guy. I remember Fatal Fury. Fatal Fury 2 in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was the silliest thing. what was it? The intro. Okay, it actually didn't have. Okay, the Super NES version didn't have the intro from the arcade version.
Okay.
Neither did the Sega Genesis, but the Genesis had its own version of an intro. And,
oh wow!
And I remember when the title screen came on, and then the announcer goes, "Fatal Fury 2," and you were just like, your version sucks. Your version sucks. And
probably because it did.
Yeah, well, I have my gripes with it, but graphically the Super NES version I think was better. But the Genesis version, I think the only reason why we enjoyed it was because we both had the soundtrack to Fatal Fury 2, the arcade, and you can turn the music off.
Yeah, I remember doing that.
But I mean, they're both technically the same game graphically, but then it's like the changes they made to it from the arcade version, for me, made it less appealing. I actually enjoyed the Super NES version, but the Super NES version had its own problems. The music sucked, for one thing, and even though the voices were scratchy on the Genesis version, they had more voice samples.
Right.
In the Super NES version, they were kind of muffled or cut off and whatnot. So each version had their flaws and everything, but
right.
When it came down to it, though, playing the game in general, we both enjoyed the game.
Yeah, totally. That core was still there.
Right.
And that's all we needed.
Right, despite it, because, I mean, even after, we had our little fight about which version was better, I still went back and picked up the Genesis version to, to play it again, because I wanted to... And use that arcade music. But
and I have Fatal Fury Special on the Super Nintendo.
Right, exactly, which which blows the Sega CD version away. Sad to say, because the Sega CD version, as I mentioned, had the arcade music. But the graphics were awful. But still, it still had that gameplay there. So I still enjoyed it despite that.
Yeah. It's funny, back then we were definitely kind of chasing the tail of arcades for the majority of the time.
Right.
We were always hoping that one day the home consoles would look as good as the arcade, and now we're beyond crossed a threshold. Yeah, like you go to an arcade now and you see the games that are there. They look like PS2 games.
Right.
They're all very, quote unquote arcadey. Like there's not much depth to them. It's just, how much fun can you have within a short period of time.
Right.
And the stuff that we have at home has gone so far beyond that like for a lot of people, it seems like we're not sure if we really wanted to go that far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, we're at a point where arcade games, they have to be so different from home versions that they don't release them. Mario Kart is a good example. I just played the most recent Mario Kart game that they released in the arcades. I am a huge fan of the Mario Kart games on the home consoles. The arcade game, not so much. They're garbage.
Yeah, I don't care how much Pac-Man you put in there.
Yeah, exactly. They're garbage, and the music sucks. And it doesn't feel like a Mario Kart game to me. I mean, my son enjoys it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, he's a kid. He's going to enjoy
kids. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever, kind of like what we did when we were kids. But when it comes down to it, I'd rather play the home console versions. Which have more depth to it. I mean, yeah, the graphics on the arcade version, they're beautiful, but it doesn't mean that the game itself is fun.
Exactly.
I don't enjoy them.
No. Even back then, compared to the Super Nintendo version, like it would have seemed just amazing how it looked, and like, oh, you can take your picture, you make your own little avatar out of your face. But it wasn't even. I would still prefer to play the Super Nintendo version over the arcade version.
Right. Well,
not even because it's hard to control already, which I hate. It's just there's a magic, a little bit of pixie dust is missing.
Right. Well, even of course, we're not going to take this the wrong way because it was two very different versions of hardware. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Mm-hmm. We had, of course, the arcade game. Mm-hmm. But remember how excited we were over the when it came out on the Nintendo?
Yes.
Just because we had some form of the arcade game, it was still
finally
fun. Mm-hmm. But the graphics, let's be honest, they sucked.
Ooh, yes. Ooh. Ooh. There's some people now that I'll see on the internet that'll talk back on that game, and for them, that was their introduction to the arcade game.
Uh-huh.
And like a little part of me kind of feels bad for them. I'm like, oh, you have no idea. Like, obviously, I'm sure they found out about it. So, but just like, oh, you poor thing.
Right.
You didn't know what it was really like. But yeah, no, we were happy to just finally be able to, go through April's apartment and fight Rocksteady.
Exactly.
At home. Because ever since that first NES game that we don't have to mention, like, we were waiting for that game to finally come home.
And it did.
God, the Nintendo was almost dead by the time it came out. But yeah, it did. Well,
it was
there's still the main.
It was at its peak, I think, at that time.
You think?
Yeah, because
okay. I mean, I know the Manhattan Project was definitely at the end.
Yeah, Manhattan Project was a good game, though. I mean, that's the arcade game we never got.
Right, and it still had the same graphics, but
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, and what's funny was I just recently found out that, because I haven't played the game in years, but I just recently found out that the music they used for Shredder, for the last boss, is the same music they use for Turtles in Time, all versions of Turtles in Time.
No, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we were just happy to have it. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
And an arcade game. I mean, I mean, to this day, how big a fan of Pac-Man I am. And I was happy to, when it came out on the Nintendo, even though it wasn't arcade perfect, I mean, I was just happy that it was closer to the arcade than, let's say, the Atari version.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and then Ms. Pac-Man on the Atari 7800 was very close to the arcade version, which I was happy about.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it's just, we were just happy with what we got back then. You know? I mean, they were fun. Pole Position, that's another one. I used to love Pole Position.
That's right.
And, I mean, the graphics on that game, even the arcade version, the graphics were terrible, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
at this point, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were good for their time, but I mean, when you got it on the Atari and you got to play it and everything, I was just happy to be able to play it, even though the graphics
happy
sucked.
to have it. Yeah. Totally. No, I agree. It's kind of an exciting time now that we're at this point where people aren't sure where they want to go with it, because we have the graphical capability to both make a Call of Duty and also to make a Rayman or Ori and the Blind Forest. Whew. There's a pretty looking game for you.
I've not heard of that.
Oh, really? Google search. Once we're done, Google search that.
I will do that.
And then there's the people that are kind of trying to mesh them both in. Like the one game that I really have been wanting to play that I haven't got to yet is Guilty Gear Xrd. Because it does finally do that thing that I've been wanting to have fighting games do since that Naruto game came out, where the characters in game, they look like they're hand-drawn, but they're actually not.
Oh, really?
They're actually polygons on a 2D playing field. And then if you land a super, it will cut to the character doing doing a cutscene, which is easy to do because they are actually polygons.
Right.
They're actual models, so they can cut to that real quickly without having to interrupt anything. And it looks amazing. I just haven't gotten to play it. Those Guilty Gear games are crazy.
I'm sorry, you just reminded me of something.
What?
And I gotta somehow find footage of this. You remember they came out with the King of Fighters Kyo?
Trying not to, but yeah.
Terrible game. And I remember when they did the supers on there, and I was like, okay, how are they gonna... And they would animate the supers. So I was like, okay, how are they gonna do it with the grapplers? I can see them doing it with like the ones that throw projectiles, but you know, what about the grapplers? And they have one for Clark. And it's just, you see the animation of the character running, and then the animation of just him turning and pointing, and then it goes back to the sprite animation again. It's really sad.
Wow.
But I'm like, can you imagine that in the arcade at the time?
Yeah, no.
It's pretty pathetic. I think you can find
that whole
clips
game
on,
was pathetic.
I think it had potential, but the core gameplay is what killed the game.
It could have. It's real tough to do like side stories of fighting games,
But that's
where
the
you
thing.
completely change, like them Sub-Zero Chronicles.
Yeah, but even though that was an issue, you know, it had a lot of potential. Okay, there's a game we can talk about with the graphics. I mean, of course, the graphics are lifted straight from the arcade game. Okay, but you know, it was mainly I forget what the genre is called, but it's you only saw it in Japan. I don't even know if they ever came out with these kind of games here, but they were mostly like text-based adventures with animations and whatnot, and you got to choose a path. And then when you got to like a fight scene, it was kind of more RPG-ish, which I thought was kind of dumb. Okay, and the fact that
It's a dating sim.
it's not a dating sim, but I guess
King of dating sims.
well, you do take Blue Mary on a date in one scene, but anyway, and the fighting, you know, you chose your move and then you do it, and since I was Japanese, I have no idea what I was doing. But then, okay, being that this is PlayStation 1, and we all know what a 2D powerhouse that system was, you know, yeah. The graphics were terrible, and on top of that, they couldn't even put an actual background in the game.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the thing
only
I remember hating. That's probably one of my biggest gripes with that game.
Yeah, no, you saw no background in there unless it was the final 3 battles. You know, where you fought the Orochi team, when you fought Orochi, and when you actually quote unquote entered the tournament. It used that one level from King of Fighters 97 where you're in a stadium or something. With a disco ball.
Right.
But then they weren't even animated.
Well, that was just typical PlayStation fare at that time.
Yeah, but I mean, even for
animating backgrounds,
even for a game like that, you know, it was pretty sad.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, the game had good graphics, but it was not fun at all. And yeah, granted, there was a language barrier, and I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I understood what exactly was going on. But when it came down to the core gameplay of that game, I could not enjoy it. I don't even know how I ended up finishing the game. I got one ending, and that was it. You had some conversation with Orochi, and then the game ended.
Whatever that conversation was.
Right, exactly.
Don't know.
So...
Deska.
But yeah. So...
I think...
Go on.
Yeah, I think... yeah, you've definitely segued well into... I guess what'll be kind of my last point. For me, at least, it's definitely more of artistic style over graphical fidelity. I mean, in this day and age, yes, I've got a very nice TV, and I would like the images to be nice and crisp and clear on there. But if the actual art is unappealing to me, I don't care how pretty it looks, I'm not going to care. I do take case in point of all this latest footage that we have been getting for KOF 14.
Even I'm upset about this.
It's just...
again, remember...
And this is kind of... Yeah.
Remember, I'm the one who's partial to a lot of things. I was even...
You will play devil's advocate for a lot, but...
I was even partial to the 3D games that came out prior to this. But,
oh, God.
But,
yeah, you are. Uh-huh.
But this one? No.
Such a step backwards in both, because... And even this, again, I don't care so much that the graphics looks like something that's out of the PS2 era. For me, it's not so much that the character models themselves look old. Mm-hmm. It's the actual art style. Like, it looks like they're trying to bring back those old character models from the old Neo Geo 64 days.
Oh, Jesus.
Where
no, they look better. Those look better.
Maybe. Like, all the characters look very effeminate to me.
Yeah. Well, isn't there a term for that?
There probably is. I'm just going to stick with effeminate for the time being. Like, and for me, it's mostly a problem with the male characters who, up until this point, the way that they've been drawn, they all look really cool
and masculine
and very tough and like as masculine as they need to look. Like, some of them don't need to look as masculine as others.
Right.
Like Kyo, he's a fairly young guy.
Right.
So he doesn't need to look super masculine, but he still looks like a dude.
Right. No.
Whereas now Terry, and Terry especially right now, like, he just looks like Justin Bieber with a ponytail.
I've not even seen Terry. I've only seen Kyo and Iori, and that was enough for me to say.
Oh, so you haven't even watched the latest trailer? Like, they've shown a whole bunch of newer characters.
Oh, Jesus.
And yeah, they all look like the way Kyo looks.
Jesus.
Where he looks like he's in some Japanese teeny bopper magazine, like I'd said last week.
Well, you know that's the thing. Graphically, I don't like that. I wouldn't have minded so much if they went with a cel-shaded 3D art style, and kept the 2D gameplay, as long as it looked appealing. But this doesn't look appealing to me.
Yeah, and especially coming off of 12 and 13,
which were looked despite 12, despite 12 being garbage.
Gameplay, right? Yeah, but artistically, it was a neat change,
right? Especially
after dealing with the exact same sprites for the last 5-6 years.
5 or 6 years.
It was a nice upgrade. And they still looked interesting. It was an interesting take on the way that they looked. But it was appealing.
Right. And
but this...
I was hoping that the next game would have been like that, would have been redrawn. I don't know how much work that would have taken. Wow.
It's late.
Me fail English? That impossible.
Yeah, impossible.
Yeah, no, what should I call it? I was hoping they were going to go with the that 2D look that they kept doing. I don't know how much work that takes to do, but I liked that art style that they were doing, and I was hoping they were going to stick to that. But with Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4 having gone in the direction that it did, and seeing how successful it was, I think SNK just looked at them and was like, guys, we better do this,
Right.
And I would be fine with that, except that they go for this realistic look at the same time, not,
it's weird, strange combination.
Yeah, and it's like, no, this doesn't look appealing. Now, that's not to say that the gameplay is gonna be good, because we're going back to the main topic. Graphics may not look great, but the gameplay might be excellent.
Yeah, it looks like it could play like a KOF game.
Which is fine, but then graphically appealing, well, that makes it more difficult to appreciate it.
Artistically, at least, it's definitely not. Like right now, the only redeeming quality I can say about this game is coming from the perspective of a wrestling fan, where I like the idea that T-Zock is in it.
Oh, is
but
he?
He's in it, but he's turned heel, and so he's no longer Eaglehead T-Zock. He's changed his name, and he's got like a dinosaur mask on now.
What?
Instead of an eagle mask. Yeah. And so just as a wrestling fan, I like that idea of it, that they took a wrestling character and changed them, which is something that they did with Raiden also, but at the time I didn't care.
Right.
But now I like the fact that now T-Zock has gone from being a good guy to being a bad guy.
Right.
And his persona has shown that.
They're kind of taking a cue from the whole wrestling.
Yeah, like he's changed his name and everything. Like, I love it. It's great.
But he's still called T-Zock?
No, he's not. He is T-Zock, but no, his name's not even T-Zock.
I see.
But it is him. It's just like Raiden and Big Bear.
You know that he's supposed to be called the Griffin?
Not anymore.
Well, you know what I mean, though.
Right.
Him and, what's called Marco Rodriguez. You know who Marco Rodriguez is?
Butts.
Yeah. That annoyed me.
Censorship is fun when it's done in weird ways.
I don't get the name. No, I like the name Marco Rodriguez. I did not like Kushnud Butt.
But
anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how King of Fighters 14 turns out. But I think the other thing is, I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed 13. I actually liked it more than Street Fighter 4. But I'm just hoping that they can. I will say that the other thing that I enjoyed about King of Fighters, which was also appealed to me, was the storylines, except for the nests. I hated the nests story arc. I kind of like that they went back to their roots with the Ash storyline. Yeah. Despite everybody hating him, he actually ended up being a respectable character. And I'm kind of hoping they don't go with something overly ridiculous, because SNK has a really bad habit of going with crazy storylines that I'm just like,
right?
No.
And now all the characters look like Ash.
Exactly. They look nice pun.
Oh.
I'm not sure if that's what you were going for, but nice pun.
Yes, it was.
Okay, we'll keep going with it. But yeah, they look like Ash.
Yeah.
So even the female characters.
Totally. They all look like Ash.
Well, I'm
going on a t-shirt.
I'm going to have to check out these new trailers, because I did not know that there were new trailers. I didn't even know that T-Zock was supposed to be in the game.
Oh, yeah. Check it out.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we've talked. Have we talked? Have we successfully?
Yeah, I think so.
Talked. No, this is just one of those long-standing debates. Will probably never go away. This podcast is certainly not going to solve whether or not good graphics is important or not. Clearly, we're even kind of torn on the subject.
Yeah, because we contradicted ourselves quite a bit.
Oh, quite a bit, yeah. There's a happy line to walk. Some games, I think, one is more important than the other.
Right.
In the end.
Yeah.
But it's always a fun discussion to bring up.
I know. And, you've got people who defend stuff that may seem kind of pointless, but I mean, it's like when you go to, like, again, I have to bring up the Assassin's Creed Unity thing with all the bug glitches and everything. It did not make the game fun, but people were still defending it, and I'm like, why are you defending something that's clearly garbage? Well, because you want to justify your reason for having the game. Yeah, at that point you've made a commitment to it, and by God, you're going to stick by that commitment. Exactly.
Till your grave is dug.
Exactly. But
Anyway,
we've officially resolved this problem here on this show. No, we have not.
Yeah, it's solved. We've solved all your problems. Come back to Gaming Tangents each and every week for us to close out a debate.
Exactly.
From now until forever. We finalize everything here.
I wish.
Yeah. Anyhow, what do you think? Do you have an opinion on good graphics? Probably not. Who cares? But if you do, you can always keep the conversation going. You can tweet at us at CrossPlatShow on the Twitters. You can also reach us at crossplatformshow@gmail.com. Leave any comments, any hateful, spiteful remarks. Don't do that. Or if you got any show ideas you'd like to hear us talk about in the future, you can leave those as well. We don't mind. And please, I know I keep saying this, cross-platform is coming. Do watch out for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be on the YouTube soon, and we will regale and party until the night is burnt through to the dawn in celebration. Word. I've overspoken, haven't I? Yes. Always with the witty retort. Thank you. That's why we do this show. Yes, so hopefully you all enjoyed this show. Please join us again next week. As always, you can find us on the SoundClouds, the Stitchers, the iTunes?
The iTunes.
The iTunes. All right. Everything's been set up. Things are great. We're moving forward. And we hope to continue to bring you some interesting discussions to keep your ear full of entertaining goodness while you're doing whatever it is you're doing while you're listening to us. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Any final remarks, Maverick?
Buy Street Fighter V when it's complete.
You heard it here fifth, folks. All right, well, that's going to be it for Gaming Tangents for this week. As always, I am Menji.
I am Maverick.
And we will see you guys next week right here on Gaming Tangents.
See you later.
Sasa, have a good one.